message you're sending out there?
We need to accept as part of the definition of the new reality that the developing world is what's propelling the world economy further forward, and that South Africa and Africa are definitely part of that story. So I think that's one of the pictures that we want to get across. And that in terms of the development of the shared norms, that I think is the other theme of this particular engagement, those shared norms I think have got to embrace a whole lot more about the necessities for development. So for example, I was participating in a panel about the future of industry, and I was saying that perhaps it's time for us to actually dare to call it by its name, industrial policy. We need to see the re-emergence of industrial policy and the recognition of the role of industrial policy, because this is what the successful developing economies have all done. This is what we are trying to do, and I think that this is going to be part of the reality as we move further forward.
I mean, you've also just unveiled in the last year your industrial action policy plan, and you're probably punting it here in Davos. But any critic would say it's all good to outline what South Africa and indeed Africa can do to improve on the industrial and manufacturing base. But the reality is you can't compete with the Indias, the Brazils and the Chinas of this world, and you need to be focusing on capacity and productivity. How are you addressing these?
Well, indeed, we do need to focus on building capacity and building productivity. That's exactly what our industrial policy is all about, trying to address this in different ways. But I think that the lessons of how did China, Brazil and India go about building their industrial competitiveness, I think there are many lessons there which we've tried to build into the industrial policy action plan. And I think it's something that requires an active and engaged role by the state in partnership, both with business and with labour. And the other thing for us in South Africa, and I think this is a common problem across the world, is we have got to make sure that we extract more employment from everything we do. Yes, we need to build sectors. We need to have industrial development, value-added production leading our growth process, but we also need to tweak every support measure we get so that we get basically more jobs for the buck.
Minister, we were speaking earlier on about the need to address internationally this whole issue of exchange rates and how we can mitigate, because South Africa right now is faced with a situation where the rand is so strong, it's affecting exporters, it's affecting their earnings, it's affecting competitiveness.
Well, I think there's no doubt that the value of the currency, particularly the overvaluation of the currency, which I think is the reality, is something which is affecting our manufacturing industries and also other export industries. It's a major issue. I think we know that its origin lies in imbalances in the world economy, particularly immediately this quantitative easing and the release of short-term capital which is entering our markets. But the issue is what can we do about it, and I think that's the debate and the discussion. Obviously it requires a combination of action at national level and also engaging in forums like the G20 and this to try to see if there's some kind of a global multilateral solution to this, because what we have is something which I think is causing a lot of problems to economies in the developing world in particular.
I mean, can there be a shared approach on this issue, particularly from leading economies within the emerging markets? Because apparently with the flight from the dollar and dollar-denominated assets, the money is coming to economies like South Africa, Brazil and India, and South Africa and Australia, which have very attractive currencies in particular.
Well, I think probably the hardest nut to crack is going to be if we can develop shared norms that embrace those that are the origin of the problem, as well as those of us who are on the receiving end. I think a cooperation discussion among those of us on the receiving end will be relatively easy to come by. It's what can we do about it together with those who are causing the problem. And I think these are going to be the big challenges that lie.
And then in terms of job creation, which you referred to earlier on, it said that South Africa has to grow at a bare minimum of 6% in order to create 500,000 meaningful jobs per annum. How is your program going to advance that?
Well, the new growth path which we have recently adopted has basically said we need to do two things. One of them is that we have to raise the growth rate, that's correct, but we also have to raise the labour absorption of each investment that takes place in our country. And I think you'll see that as we move ahead, and this is the work that's been done, these announcements will be made in the State of the Nation address, both of these aspects will be a major focus of our work as we move ahead.
I mean, and finally, as you're dealing with international investors and leaders within the international business community, one of the biggest criticisms they have of Africa, not South Africa, but Africa, is just the bureaucratic, cumbersome task of getting businesses set up on the African continent, just making the environment conducive. It's something you have to grapple with as Minister of Trade and Industry. How are you addressing this with your peers in Africa and then advancing the investment case for Africa here in Davos?
Well, I suppose most of our efforts are on the national level, and I think that what we are trying to do is we're trying to identify forms of regulation which are simply red tape. We're trying to reduce those. I think one big reform that we will be undertaking in South Africa is the new Companies Act, which will be coming into force and operation on the 1st of April, and that will be something which I think will reduce very, very significantly the amount of bureaucratic red tape. Yes, we want to reduce red tape so that we make whatever role we play as government, and I think it needs to be an active role, efficient, effective, and basically conducive to economic growth and development.